Once upon a time, two boys grew up playing hockey in the village of Terrace, British Columbia. One of them went on to play in the National Hockey League. The other became a comedian. Now, one flies planes and coaches youth hockey. The other is still a comedian and owns newscasts. This is their podcast, Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian.
Jeff Sharples looking tanned and relaxed, coming home from Disneyland, where he went to Star Wars World, rode the teacups, threw up, and now he's back on Orange Slices. How was it?
It was great. I think, the kids went on the teacups. I didn't go on this time, which is kind of almost a rite of passage, but did Small World after all, and the Star Wars and California Adventure, and it's crazy. That Cars ride is nuts. And the Star Wars, if you're going to take your kids to Disney or you're going to go as an adult, you got to go check out that Star Wars. I mean,
and you don't even know if you checked it all out. Like, there's so much of the Star Wars. Like, after we went, we found another whole new section that we were supposed to go to. It was crazy.
Yeah, you know what? I think. Correct. I think that the issue that Disney has is Star Wars is becoming such a big part of what they are that it's almost, I don't want to say marginalizing the rest, because the rest of it's so great too, but Star Wars is just this 800-pound gorilla that is in the back of the park. I mean, you go back there, they got the bar that you can go into and have a drink and have something to eat. That Han Solo and Obi-Wan were in one of the first shows. You got the Millennium Falcon sitting out there. You can walk right up to it. R2-D2 was out there when we were there.
Oh, no way.
And then they got two new rides. One of them's the Rise of the Resistance, I think, and it is insane. It is insane how cool it is. I don't want to give it away, but if you're going to Disney, my recommendations are obviously that there's 3 Star Wars rides, but 2 are in the back in the Star Wars area that are brand new, fantastic. You got to do Cars. And then
you got to pay extra for Cars, but you got to do it.
Well, you got to kind of, there's some finagling you got to do. You got to decide where you're going to go, because everybody that is going to Cars at 8 a.m. they're all running to the same place, right? So You might be the really early into the park, but you're lined up behind everyone else to get in there. But Soaring is unreal. I still think that's one of the best rides going.
Guardians of the Galaxy is a fun one too.
Guardians of the Galaxy, Space Mountain, Matterhorn's an old throwback. We all remember going there as kids. So, and there's one other one I'm sure I'll remember at some point. But
you know what I think they need to do? I think they need to do with Star Wars, and I like the way we're helping out Disney because they haven't got it covered, but we'll help.
They need the help. Yeah.
I think they should do Star Wars like they did California, like it should be a separate thing completely. I think that would make it a little easier for us, the people, I don't know. And they could probably charge more, but if it was just all one park for Star Wars, it would help out, I think.
Yeah, it's something else. But I think, like, if you're going to go on one ride that sums up the whole Disneyland experience, California Adventure, I think Cars is that ride. It's just such a fun ride. It's outside for the majority of it. They make you feel like you're in Radiator Springs, and I'm sure there's some Radiator Springs places out there, but the one they're talking about doesn't exist except in an animation. And you walk in there and with your $8 ice cream cone, and you couldn't be happier. So
I love it.
Anyways, all the Star Wars people out there, the Disney people out there know way more than we do. Are like, you guys don't know what you're talking about, but it's a lot of fun and you get a lot of steps in. And then there's Splash Mountain, and then there's the other one called the Grizzly. It's a ride where you bounce around in the water and get wet too. That's a really cool ride. So
yeah, that's a lot of
fun.
Yeah. It's just a good time. It's just a good time.
Talking about good times, right? We're a good time enjoying Orange Slices, talking about something other than hockey again this week. But we were talking before we came on a little bit. You went to 2 games this weekend. Why don't you fill us in on that? Because you did 2 and 2, so that's kind of cool.
I did back to back, and first of all, I went to the my buddy Frank sent me some tickets. He said, "You remember Frank from Carrie Ann's birthday? He runs esports arenas.
Yeah, yep.
He's actually, I think, done some business with Michelle as well, right? So he sent tickets. He sent over 6 tickets for the fam, and you guys aren't going to use them, so we went and we were taken care of. We met them at the door. They met us at the door, got our bags through. So we were able to actually take bags into the arena. And then they gave me a jersey with bag 23 on the back for 2023 season. And I took a photo with their staff during the game, and they put it on their Instagram. So that was nice of them. And then they invited us on their podcast. So we will be going on their podcast at some time. And we had seats, but we stayed mostly in the box, the Ducks box. We sat up there and had some snacks, and Carrie Ann drank wine and was clapping for the wrong team. It was awesome.
She was, they had a little bit of wine there. They took good care of you guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good. It was, I want to thank them. I want to thank Frank, and I want to thank Andrea, with the Ducks, who just took great care of us, and it was a lot of fun. And the game, the Ducks versus the Avalanche, which you thought would have been a blowout, the Ducks actually did fairly well, but you could tell they're trying to maybe not win, maybe try to get a couple extra picks there. My favorite player, Derek Grant, just a throwback looking player, right? Have you watched him? You've watched him a little bit, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think Derek Grant's a British Columbia boy too.
Abbotsford, British Columbia.
Yeah, so I've watched him. I always liked him. There's a guy that's done a really good job. He's found a way to keep himself in the league. And yeah, I was surprised at the deadline someone didn't pick him up. He's good on draws. He's a big guy. He can play.
He's a tough guy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised like somebody didn't go after him for just a little bit of beef.
Yeah. Yeah, he kills penalties for you. And he's had a great career.
He's on the power play.
Yeah. Why not put him out there? I mean,
there's a center on the power play. I was just like,
why not? Why not in Anaheim, right? What do you got to lose?
Okay.
Everybody out there. And talking about that, I want to talk real quick about the reason these teams are trying to lose. Connor Bedard lost out in Game 7 of the against Saskatoon Blades, the Regina Pats in the Western Hockey League. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there you're repping it. So those of you that might not follow along too closely, Connor Bedard is I don't want to say he's the next Connor McDavid, but he's the next big thing. Probably the biggest thing they've talked about since Connor McDavid was going to get drafted.
I'm very excited about him.
He's going to be first overall. And anyways, his stats were like in 7 games against the Saskatoon Blades. He plays for Regina. They lost. I think he had 7 goals and 11 assists, or some. It was like it was cartoon kind of numbers. Like it was like video game numbers. It was crazy. So he had he averaged over 2 points a game, but he couldn't quite push his team over the top.
It kind of proves that one guy can't win the whole thing. Like that's what it proves, right? Like he still needs somebody with him to finish it off. He can have all that, but he just couldn't win the whole thing by himself.
Well, the thing, these teams, like we'll get into the teams that are, you've got Columbus and Chicago vying right now for the best opportunity to get the first pick, right? And then Anaheim's in there, San Jose's in there. That other Western Conference juggernaut, I might have already said them, Columbus. Yeah, I might have already said them, right? Them and Chicago.
Columbus is at the bottom, the very bottom.
Yeah, but they're right there with Chicago, and then you've got other teams on the outside looking that might be able to get, pull off the miracle and pull the bingo ball. But this kid has, just right off the bat, for any organization that's had a really bad year and might have the opportunity to draft him, overnight he changes the dynamic, because you're going to get this big adrenaline rush. Plus you're going to get this big media push, and people are going to be watching your team next year because they're going to want to see what this kid's going to do. And I'm interested to see if he decides he's going to, whether or not he's going to play for the World Championship team for Canada. because now, you got to wonder about injuries and what's going on with that, right? So he doesn't want to get injured before the draft. So is that it for him this year or what? I guess we'll find out.
Find out another one of those guys that I kind of read a little bit about this. I don't know if you know anything more about this, and I don't know if I should bring it up because we don't know about it. Is Shane Wright? His team got knocked out of the playoffs in junior. Did he end up in Coachella Valley, or what did they do?
Yeah, they sent him down. So Shane Wright,
So he's continuing.
yeah, he's going to continue his season, which I think is great for him. He got knocked out in the Ontario Hockey League, so he goes down to Coachella, who's one of the top teams in the American League, and they'll plug him in right away and play, and they'll get him up to speed, on the pro game again. And Coachella, hopefully they go for a good long run in the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. But did I ever tell you my story about Coachella?
No. When you went to the concert?
Yeah, well, so Coachella, I didn't realize. I thought it was a casino out by Palm Springs.
Oh, I think you did tell me. Yeah.
I did. I thought Coachella was a casino. So I'm walking down Century Boulevard one day in LA, and I look up and I see Calvin Harris is going to be playing at Coachella. And I was like, man, these casinos, they get all the biggest names. I didn't realize Coachella was a music festival. And then I got filled in this weekend and sorry if I'm get these mixed up, but Coachella, I think, is next weekend or is one of these weekends coming up. And then 2 weeks after that is the next one, which is what, Stagecoach?
No, it's called Old Cella. They call it Old
Cella. So that would be the one that you and I would be going to.
Yeah. You'd love that because it's country music.
Yeah. So anyways,
listen to this. So there's a band called Yachtly Crew. And Carrie Ann wants you to take this, and they play 80s music, and they do it yacht style. And she goes, Jeff would love this. So you might be going to see Yachtly Crew at some point, just to let you know.
Yeah, you know what, Yachtly Crew does, I think, the Palms here once in a while in Vegas, and that was the Yacht Rock was on my my list on the way down to LA from Vegas. Drove down to Yacht Rock. I got Prime Country. I know, very exciting for you younger folks, but also the NHL Network I had on for a cup of coffee, 80s and 8. And then I also had Mosaic.
Oh, I had the Mosaic on.
Yeah, because, we don't want to be yelling at each other the whole way. So we put some cool.
How many people were in the old rap?
We had 5. And then we had 2 met us there. So we were a small hockey team going down there.
Small hockey team, but you were family vacation, holiday row. Whoa. You were, that's awesome. Good for you guys.
13 hours the first day in Disneyland, and then 14 hours the second day between California Adventure and Disneyland.
I don't know if you see my face.
Back to Star Wars, right?
So. But I don't know if you see my face when you said 13 hours. I was like, from Vegas? Holy shit.
No. That's a story for another day for our friends that rented a Tesla and had to stop and charge it 3 times because they turned
on the air conditioning high
and drove it through the desert when it was 90 degrees.
Electric cars suck.
You know what? I think as they work on the batteries on those things, I think they're awesome. But I think if you're going to go any distance, there's got to be a little pucker factor with that whole thing, eh? You know what I mean? But just so all the people are worried about the I-15, they got a charging station Baker, and they're putting a big one in Barstow, so you should be good. So
that's awesome.
There you go.
We were talking about hockey, and somehow we ended up back on Disneyland. But let's talk about who didn't make it so far. So San Jose, Anaheim, Columbus, Detroit. Detroit, Chicago, Buffalo. Is Buffalo out for sure now? I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, well, let me just look, but they're done. Yeah, they're not going to make it. They're
Calgary.
I guess, you know what? There's maybe an outside chance Buffalo could make it. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say never, but yeah, we'll get to Calgary in a second. But the ones that are going after Bedard, and Vancouver, right? Vancouver's played much better recently, but they're not going to make it either. So let's talk about the teams that we had kind of picked to be better teams or finish higher than they did. I'll start with Washington. Obviously, a lot of great news this year with Ovi. becoming second all time in goal scoring. Tough year at the same time because he lost his dad. And I think that kind of, they were on the cusp there. But when he lost his dad later in the season, I just think the wheels kind of fell off the bus there in Washington. They traded some guys away. They're going to have to try and retool really quickly because they got their superstars. They're all a little bit older. And so I would think Washington's going to try and plug some holes and get back in the race again next year. But unfortunate because you'd love to see Ovi in the playoffs. He's such a dynamic player and such a big personality and so good for the game. So unfortunately.
I was a little shocked and surprised how they took the human element out of when Ovi's dad did pass away. I'm like, everybody just kind of turned him into a robot and thought he'd come back completely normal. I was just like, oh, it was a little gross, to be honest with you. I'm like, they barely gave him time to grieve at all. He's just like back.
Well, and if you think about what's gone on in that guy's world, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, but also, with everything that's gone on with Russia and the Ukraine, and he's, I don't know how close he is with Putin, but, with the leadership of the Russian nation, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that has to process while he's being a superstar, trying to be everything for everyone. I'm not going to dig into all that, but I just think the straw that broke the camel's back obviously was his dad passing suddenly. And here's a guy that I think he's over 40 goals again. It's just insane the way that he continues to produce, and nothing can stop him. But I just don't think that the team was the same when he left and when he came back. Obviously, the team came out of the All-Star break and just could not put it together. So,
it takes a team, and when there's some pieces missing, there's trouble. There was a lot of injuries there this year too, right?
Well, they're just one of those teams that is so tough out east. That I just think there's so many good teams. There's good teams that are going to make the playoffs. Ottawa. Either you're going to have some combination of Pittsburgh, the Islanders, or Buffalo isn't going to make it. Detroit's on the rise. You've got every night's a tough night in the Eastern Conference, minus say what Columbus has done this year, and Philly and Montreal weren't great. But I don't know. I think Washington, they're going to have to kind of sit down and figure this out this summer, and they're going to have to figure it out pretty quick because the clock's ticking. Ovi isn't going anywhere, and I doubt Backstrom is, and Tom Wilson's not going anywhere. And they signed Kemper to a longer-term deal, their goalie. So Carlson's not going anywhere on the blue line for them. So they got to figure it out pretty quick.
They got to figure it out, and it's a tough division to be in.
Correct.
There's going to be a lot of changes coming up. Let's see who else. We don't need to talk about the bottom teams because they've decided what they're going to do. But the teams that Pittsburgh's kind of floating along on the line there. I don't think that's happening. I don't know. Do you think that's happening?
Well, you know what? I'm looking. So they can still get in. The Islanders. It looks like Florida is just about. I mean, Florida's right on the cusp too. So Florida is a feel-good story out of all of them, right? They could, but if they fall out, then they could be considered a huge disappointment too. But someone, either the Islanders, Florida, or Pittsburgh, and then Buffalo, you could throw in there because they have 3 games left. So they could conceivably, if all the other teams didn't win, they could get in. Buffalo is a feel-good story, whether they get in or not, right? They're right on the cusp. They've got the young superstar and Tage Thompson. They have a lot to be really excited.
A lot to be excited about in Buffalo. Yeah. Question: If Florida doesn't make it in, does that take a little bit of heat off of Calgary?
That's a good question. I was thinking about that this morning because Calgary's not going to make it, which is massive disappointment. And I think if we went back to the start of the year, I probably had Washington as a surprise team. I didn't have them on a surprise team being out. I had them being in. And of course, we all thought Calgary was just going to roll with the division. But Calgary never found their legs. And I think it does. It'll definitely be talked about in Calgary if Florida makes it and they don't. And Matthew Tkachuk has 108 points right now. I think he's top 10 for sure. He might be, I don't know, 5th or 6th. Let's see. You got McDavid and Draisaitl 1 and 2. And Kucherov's in there, but he's top 10 for sure. Unbelievable season. And if you look at what he's done in the last 10, 15 games when they've really needed him, he's just been on fire. So that trade right now, if Florida gets in early round, would go to Florida. But Mackenzie Weegar had a good year. I thought,
but at the same time, they're both Calgary and Florida were upper echelon last year, and they've both fallen quite hard after the trade. So I don't know.
Lots of changes, right? But yeah, Calgary's the real. That one's just tough to figure out. But I watched Calgary a lot, and my concern with Calgary is that it just seemed. I'll borrow a word from our old friend Gary Lawless when he's talking about the Golden Knights. They were stubborn in Calgary this year. Daryl is Daryl, right? I mean, good old farm boy from Viking, Alberta, stubborn, guy, but he's had success. He's won cups. He knows what he's doing. And then you got today's player that's stubborn. And I don't know how much either side, the players or coaches in Calgary, were willing to give at the end. They did lose 17 games in overtime or shootout. So, I mean, if they get half of those, like if you look at Vegas and Edmonton, they're up around 8 or 9 each overtime losses, right? Mm-hmm. So if you give Calgary 5 points back in that, then Calgary's in the playoffs, right? But I just looked at a team that was, it just looked like there wasn't one side or the other wasn't going to give in Calgary. And Daryl, I mean, you just watch the way the LA Kings played under Daryl, and Kopitar still plays that way every night. Checks well, plays 200 feet. Doughty, same thing. Jonathan Quick did everything they needed in the net back then for them. And then they had everyone else buy in. I don't know. Calgary this year, I watched them play a ton, and the chances that they would give up for the type of team and players they have were really surprising to me. That's the biggest takeaway for me watching Calgary, was the chances that they gave up against some nights were just incredible. And I just wasn't used to seeing that from a team that Daryl coaches.
There you bring up words. Their consistency was not there. Their consistency was not there. Sometimes.
No, and disappointing, right? Because, I mean, at one point we thought, if Edmonton kept going and Calgary kept going, we could have a battle of Alberta in the first round. But now the blender, who knows? Throw the jerseys in a blender. You don't know what you're going to get. And Seattle's coming to play Vegas tonight and then play again Thursday.
Going to that game? Are you going to that game tonight?
No, I'm not going. But they could have a best of 9 because there's a really good chance right now if Vegas doesn't get maximum points here finishing off, and Edmonton does, that Vegas and Seattle end up playing each other in the first round. So
that'd be fun.
It would be really cool. It takes me back to the Western Hockey League when we used to have best of 9s in the opening round. We play Kamloops, best of 9, opening round of the Western
9.
Like, so game 5, you're up 4-1 and you're like, oh, things are looking pretty good. And I think the other team wins 2 games in a row, and now you've played 7 games and you're up
4-3.
Best of 9. Just
funny. Oh God.
I mean, what are they trying to do back then? Ruin people's lives. I mean, it was just insane to me. But yeah, so we played a best of 9. So I was looking at Seattle, Vegas. This could set up as a best of 9, but then Vegas could end up with Winnipeg. They could end up with Nashville. They could end up with Seattle or the Kings. Right? I think that, and so I mean, it's crazy to have.
You play Jonathan Quick if they end up with the Kings.
Oh yeah, I think. Well, supposedly all the goalies are getting back healthy in Vegas, so I think the one thing that I would say you can almost be guaranteed, and Bruce Cassidy will probably prove me wrong on this, but I think no matter what, Quick is one of your 4 goaltenders. You got 4 of them. He's one of your 2 goaltenders that dresses every night in the playoffs. And there's a really good chance they start with him.
Tough not to play him. For people that are wondering, I wonder who the guest is today. We don't have a guest. Jeff and I are just coming to the end of the season. We thought it'd be just Jeff and I talk about the season, talk about how the hockey pool's ending up. We have a winner. They will receive oranges from us and a sticker. This is also brought to you by Super Deeker. This episode, superdeeker.com. Go there. Get yourself a training system where you can learn how to stick handle. Don't be an Ian Bag. Be a Jeff Sharples.
Or Dave Barr. Even better. Be Dave Barr.
Be Dave Barr. Set the bar high. Be a Dave Barr.
3 stripes of tape on your stick. Be Dave Barr. Save your parents money. But hey, I want
And
to
use slices, and get it yourself a discount. I'm trying to do the advertisement.
I know I just totally ran you off into the weeds on that.
You're like,
Sorry.
I don't care anymore. We're not
My apologies.
Yeah.
But I was just looking. I got today. I put the standings up because we're actually going back to our roots, our old school roots. But there's some really interesting stuff that's going on here. Like some of the matchups, like Carolina and New Jersey, can still flip flop for first or second in their division. And the consolation prize for finishing second in the Metropolitan is you get the Rangers in the first round, most likely. And then
doesn't matter who you get in the it doesn't matter who you get in the East. It's gonna be tough.
It sucks. And you know what? And in the West, same thing. I mean, really, you can't expect, unless some team gets injuries or something out of the ordinary happens. You just can't expect it to be any less than 6 games in the first round with any of these teams. They still got so much energy. Let's talk about the Lightning, though, real quick. Okay. I don't know, like, if it was any other team, everyone would be yelling, fire, pull the alarm. Like the Lightning have just kind of, I don't know if they just said, we're good. We know we're playing Toronto and we'll be ready for Toronto. But the Lightning have not been themselves recently. So it'll be interesting to watch them, how they, handle Toronto, which is going to be, a must-see first-round series. Everyone's going to be
It could be an interesting one. I got a photo from our friend Luciano Cosmare. He sent me a photo, him all dressed in Leafs gear, care of Jeff Sharples. Here's a picture right here. We'll put it up right there. And he said, you know what he says? He goes, don't talk to me until the second round. That's
He's already wearing his Leafs gear. I don't know if it's in anticipation of all the excitement or anticipation that he's not going to be able to wear it after the first.
I think so. Well, here's the thing with him. He will shut down for about 5 days after they lose. and then he won't talk about hockey until September. Like, it's funny. He's so funny. I love the Luciano. Montreal's fired up. Montreal's fired up at the old Toronto Maple Leafs for playing their e-bug. Oh, does that come back and haunt them? Is that bad juju?
You know what? I think putting your first string power play unit out with a few minutes left in the game in a 7-1 game, you're winning 7-1, is worse than playing, the backup goalie. Like, I'll give you an example. Last night, watched Seattle and Arizona, and they put Bedard in, who went to school at ASU in Tempe, and he went in for the last 2 minutes of the game, the last minute. That's not a big deal. I think every team could understand that. But if Montreal wants to use it as motivation and Toronto was rubbing their nose in it, then by all means, go for it. I mean, that's the other side of the coin, right? It's a feel good on one side, but you're kind of sticking it to the other team. So to me, Montreal is going to be a really interesting team to watch as we go into next season, because they plugged a lot of young guys in this year. They've got some high draft picks. We'll see what they do, but I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of giving the kid a chance, a chance of a lifetime to play in an NHL game. But on the other side, I could see where Montreal would have a problem with them playing Matthews and Marner and Tavares and all their top dogs on the power play with a minute left in a 7-1 blowout.
I just think it continues the rivalry. It's pretty, it's really like, I don't know.
Montreal needs to find some juice. I mean, let's face it. When the COVID happened and they were up in the North Division and they made it all the way to the finals, those were bright days in Montreal. Last couple of years have not. Yeah, the days have not been as.
They fell back to earth hard. Yeah. Forgot to pull the chute. Forgot to pull the ripcord on the chute and just smacked into the earth and like, oh, we do believe in gravity. So.
For sure. So I'm just trying to think without us just talking ourselves right into the ditch.
Well, I got to bring up. I went to the Canucks Kings
Yes.
game last night, and that goalie that they got from Corpus, is it Corpusalo? Is that who?
Marcelo, yes.
He's very good, and it seems like he may have come into his own the last couple games and played very, very well. Just calming presence. That's what I noticed about him. And Vancouver, a lot going on there. I don't even want to talk about it. It's just, it's
Love to get talk on. I really, I don't know if he'd ever come on in the summer. I just think the world of him. I loved him as a player. I love him as a coach. On TNT, he was phenomenal.
yeah.
The reason he took, like, he came back. He had such a good gig going on TNT, right? He worked a couple nights a week, maybe, or whatever they asked him to do. It wasn't very much.
Yeah, but if he,
He's 24/7 in Vancouver, but I think he looked at their team and said, I have a superstar in Pedersen, I have a superstar in Hughes, and I have a superstar in Demko. So,
and Demko didn't play last night, and Delia,
yeah, Delia, yeah.
he was I thought he was really good. Yeah, he got shelled a little bit, but at the same time he was, one thing I did notice that Vancouver out hit them 22-14. That was going into the third period, and they ended up out hitting them. So it seems like they might be taking his style, but they're not big enough to out hit teams. They're a very small team, very small.
Yeah, I just think that's his way of getting these guys more engaged. Like, I think it's part of a bigger picture for Talk. I mean, we all know how Rick Tocchet played. He was hard-nosed guy, but he also understands today's game and today's player. And Vancouver, I mean, good for you for getting them in again, but they leave you wanting more. And I think Talk is going to go in there and make sure that they don't leave you wanting more, that they provide you with more. And I don't know. I just think it's really interesting that he took that job. Obviously, he's got some familiarity with the upper management. And I think he's going to do a great job. But yeah, it's just Vancouver is, when you get a feeling in the middle of your chest or your gut, you're like, oh, that's the feeling I had for most of the year with Vancouver. And it's just so disappointing that they weren't part of this playoff push. I mean, and think about this. They're playing pretty well, and they got rid of Horvat. Now they've got a couple of young guys. They traded for Beauvillier and another young kid that they're going to try and plug in a high draft pick. But yeah, I don't know. Talk. He'll have his hands around this thing by the end of the summer, and that team definitely won't get off.
The problem is there's not much wiggle room. Like every team in the West is good too. You're like, okay, so Vancouver gets better. You don't think every other team's going to get better as well?
Well, you've got Edmonton, and as long as the superstars are healthy, right, you might as well pencil them in for a playoff spot wherever you want. Calgary is going to. That's just not going to hit. Like, you got way too much in the tank in Calgary to be like they are. Seattle's come out and basically plays like Carolina of the West. They're all over you. Lots of great energy. And their goalies are starting to stop the puck for them. Okay, look great. And then you've got LA, and the way LA plays every night, I mean, they just can grind you into the ice. They're not going to be out of games. And then Vegas,
fast too.
Yeah, and Vegas has still got, as good a defense as there is in the West. So you're just talking about the Pacific. So yeah, Vancouver's got to find a way to rise up and get into the mix. But I think if they don't take 10 or 15 games off like they did this year, I think they can be right there. I mean, Pedersen's, this kid's all world, and he's winning games for the Canucks single-handedly, almost like McDavid does sometimes for the Oilers. So
he looks a little bit bigger this year too. He looks a little thicker. I bet you he puts on a little bit more weight this summer, which is going to change him even more.
Well, and I'm not here suggesting that Edmonton only wins because of McDavid, but the rest of the team has got in tow, and they've added some really nice pieces around those guys.
Yeah. You need it's kind of like, and I hate to say ducks, is like you got to have the lead duck and everybody and V's behind them. It's got to be, it's got to be like that. And I don't I think Pedersen's there, but he's just doesn't have the ducks around him. So
Well, I think you'll see Vancouver make some deals in the summer to move some more guys out. And they might not bring the flashiest guys back in, but they're going to bring in guys that are serviceable and play the way that Talk wants them to play. And then that leaves you in the Pacific with San Jose, who we got to figure out what they're going to do with, Eric Carlson and some of their guys. And
101 points. Is that what he's got?
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about him today. Eric Carlson, the first time in I don't know how many years. There's only been 5 or 6 defensemen in the history of the game get over 100 points, and Carlson did it last night. So congrats to him.
I think they vote for
Millard takes him down all the time. We got to give him tip your hat.
EK 65.
EK 65. So,
do you think he wins the trophy? Is it
I mean,
because of that?
he had a historical year, right? By defenseman standards. How can you not give him the trophy? To me, there's some guys out there. I mean, you talk about a McAvoy in Boston, Lindholm in Boston.
I haven't even talked about Boston. That Boston thing's
those two guys have been unreal. But then you got Fox in New York. But look at where these guys play in these big markets. To me, a guy that I think, I mean, of course, Makar in Colorado, but a guy that I watch all the time that I think's just been lights out this year is Pietrangelo. And he's probably going to get a few votes here or there. Another guy, Doughty. Doughty's come back and been unbelievable.
had a great year.
He's unreal. I think he's got 50 points, so pretty darn close. I'll look and it'll probably be 27 or something after. But I thought I saw last night that he was right on the cusp of 50 points. This guy's no one plays more in the league than Doughty, other than I think Makar. He leads the league in ice per game, and then Doughty. And Pietrangelo is another guy. But they play later in the day, right out west. Everyone back east isn't going to be up at 1 or 2 in the morning watching these guys finish their games off. So yeah.
And San Jose only scored 100 goals this year, and they're not going to put him on the page every time because he's the one that scored every one of them. So, yeah, it's. I would say if anybody doesn't get better, it's San Jose this year. I would say that's a couple year build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Anaheim.
Do you think they get rid of? Who do you think they get rid of?
Well, I think to be honest with you, if you miss the playoffs, I think you're taking every phone call there is. So they're going to have to try and find a way, and it's going to be really tough. But it would be good for Eric Carlson in San Jose and the San Jose Sharks if they can find some kind of avenue to move him this summer. Right now, they got time to work on it. They probably already got some kind of framework set out for teams so they know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
San Jose needs a reboot, right? And then Couture still got a lot left in the tank, but the problem is he's got long-term contract. So they've got some really good players in San Jose, but they're in a rebuild. So what do? They might have to take their medicine on some of these guys and maybe not get back as much as they want, but they got to start moving down the road for tomorrow and their future.
The West is better when Anaheim and San Jose are competitive.
Well, San Jose it was the noisiest building in the league. Yeah. Right back in the day, the Shark Tank, no one wanted to go in there, and that's kind of dissolved here recently. So yeah, absolutely, you want to see it. And to be quite honest with you, I don't want to see Chicago playing like they are either. Like there's an original 6 or Montreal. You want to see these, you want to see everyone competitive, but let's not forget about some of those original 6 teams that need a shot in the arm for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We got we're what about half an hour in. We want
half an hour. I bet you were 40 minutes.
Yipping and yapping.
Yeah, too much talking.
Let's do this. Let's no, you know what? We'll talk about when we record next week. It's Tuesday. Has the playoffs started? When do the playoffs start?
The playoffs are starting on the 17th, so Monday night, and we'll be recording next week, probably on Monday.
On Monday? Okay.
Probably Monday. Yeah. Maybe we have a special, we don't know, how do you say that, bury the lead, but we have a special, this week, Ian and I are talking because next week it's so special.
Next week is so special. It's going to knock your tits off, people. It's going to be exciting next week. Do we pick our final four here right now? Me and you, because it starts before we start next week.
Well, we don't even know who's all going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, we got to do it next week. We'll do it next week.
We'll do it. Well, this will be out on the day that it starts. So the playoffs are going to start on the 17th, which is Monday night, a week today. And what's exciting is there's a bunch of teams that have no idea who they're going to play yet, and a bunch of teams that don't even know if they're going to be in the playoffs. So you've got drama. So
yeah, we can't do anything. But what you can do is go to headygear.com and pick yourself up a backpack, put on your swag on it, put some logos on it, and therefore headygear.com. Use the code BAG15, get yourself a discount of 15%, get yourself a backpack, show them off. Heady Gear, brought to you by Brett Hedican, Stanley Cup champion. All right. We got anything else we want to talk about?
I think that's it. Yep, I think we're good for this week.
I know you got to go. You got to go teach the children's.
No, nothing today. I'm off.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the call. Waiting to get called up to the show. Okay. No, but I do have one shout out, and it's a pretty easy shout out, not really hockey related, although I'm sure he was a big hockey fan. A big shout out to the Walt Disney, who's no longer with us, but you might as well shout out to one of the biggest names in the world, because what this gentleman and the people that were with him did is created a vision for where you can go and take your young kids, and you can take your mom and dad and all your family in between and go and yeah, it's not free, no question, but it is a great time. One of the coolest things I will say that I saw this weekend when I was down in LA, we were at Disneyland California Adventures, the kids and the strollers and everyone was doing their thing, and the people like us were doing ours, and everyone was having a good time. Very, very rarely would you hear a raised voice. Everyone was very courteous and polite to each other, and I thought, you know what a way to get along, right? And so it happens to bring people together, and anything that can do that, you tip your hat to. So shout out to Walt Disney this week. And I mean, we all grew up watching Disney on Sunday nights, so just really cool.
I love it. That's good. I will stick with the family theme. My sister put out a thing last night that it's apparently Siblings Day yesterday or like that, but I'm pretty sure she does that 3 or 4 times a year just to trick me. So if it is Siblings Day, thanks for being my sister, Jocelyn. Shout out to you. Non-sibling related. Thank you, Dana Bryson, again for getting me tickets for last night. And I'm sure we'll go to a playoff game as well. Dana Bryson always hooking us up. And the best part, parking. Always hooks me up with parking. God damn, I love the parking. I love the parking.
You should just go down and sit in your car
and listen to the game.
Dana, the parking was so good, I couldn't leave.
I couldn't even get out of my car. It was so fantastic.
I had to laugh. The playoff game we went to last year. We're standing out there getting ready to walk to our parking. Here comes Rob Blake just walking by. He's parked about 4 cars down from us.
He's further than us. Yeah.
The GM, president of the team. I'm like, okay, good job, Dana. So
thank you, Dana. So
thank you for Ian's parking, Dana. Good job.
I love it. I love going to a hockey game, and I love parking. Oh my God. It's so much fun. If you haven't, I know not everybody gets to go to an NHL game, but if you get a chance, try your hardest to go. One of my favorite times was I took Vancouver, Anaheim in the playoffs. I took mom and dad. We're standing room only in Anaheim watching the game, and it went into, I think, double overtime or something like that, and just loving every minute. My mom cheering the Canucks on. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, go. Make sure. I don't know what that shutout was about, but it wasn't. Yeah, go to a hockey game. Love to all.